Welcome, dog.
Thank you, bro. It's good to be here, man.
It's good to have you. You're looking big, dude.
Trying my hardest, man. Trying my hardest. Eating good, training hard.
Good to hear. Man, I wanted to kick it off because I don't know much about it, but I heard you speak about it a little bit a couple of weeks ago, is this Bali trip.
Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah, man. So it's called the Bali Time Chamber. And basically, I mean, I came across it on Instagram, to be honest. And, you know, I'm pretty big on really pushing myself to my limits, finding my capacity, but also networking and building relationships with other people who have a similar mindset. Because I think once you get yourself into those kind of environments and with those kind of people, that's where great things happen, right? You can only go so far in your own, but when you are surrounded by a team of people who are also pursuing greatness in their own avenues, then that's the sky's the limit, right? So what it is it's this sort of like men's health, business, networking, like entrepreneurial retreat in Bali. And I can't pronounce the name of like the what's the word? Like, I don't want to say suburb because it's not like province is the word I was looking for, that it's in, but it's like 3 or 4 hours sort of north of the Denpasar airport in the middle of the jungle. And basically this guy's built just, they sort of market it as, if you're familiar with Dragon Ball Z, like the hyperbaric time chamber. Where sort of Goku and Vegeta and stuff go there, and it's like, you know, time moves slowly there, and that's where they train and really sort of push themselves to the next level. So they've built all these cabins out there, and there's a gym, a fitness and sort of recovery center, like sauna, ice bath, and they have a full kitchen where they serve sort of organic red meat, really just high quality food. And they limit it to 16 men. It's a male only thing at a time. And yeah, it's really like there's no set schedule or routine. It's kind of, you go there to work on what you feel like you need to be working on in that time, whether it be your fitness, your business, or yourself. Really, it's sort of up to you. And they encourage collaboration with the other guys that are there to really forge some good relationships and just grow and learn from each other. So, yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm going for, it was originally 3 weeks. I've had to cut it short a couple of days because of a work trip I've got sort of immediately post that now. Yeah. But yeah, my roommate, business partner, Jacob, he went in January of this year. He spent a couple of weeks over there and said it was fantastic. So, and on the back of that, you know, he's built and maintained some really good relationships with the guys that were over there who we're sort of actively looking to do business with, and I've gotten to know over the last couple of months as well. So, man, I'm keen, man. It's going to be pretty cool.
It sounds pretty sick.
Yeah.
Like, is it something that it runs in sessions, like everybody arrives at the same time and stays for a certain amount of time, or are people dropping in and out all throughout the year?
Yeah, it's very fluid. So, yeah, it's sort of come and go as you please, really. So they sort of say it's a minimum of 1 week, but people typically stay sort of closer to that month mark. So, yeah, it is like a constantly changing group of people who are there, which I think is going to be a really cool element of it as well. Is like you're constantly sort of not only adapting to the environment, but also the people that are there, and I imagine it keeps things pretty fresh. So do you know anybody who's going to this, or are you just flying in solo? Flying in solo, man.
Really?
Yeah, flying in solo. So I've got no idea, dude. And if it wasn't like for Jacob, and we've sort of spoken about it a little bit, I said to him, I was like, man, I don't really want to know too much because I want to go in,
have your own experience.
Yeah, exactly. And not that it would be influenced in a negative way at all, but it's just like I'm really keen to find out what it's going to be like for me, because I'm sure that my experience will be entirely different to his purely as a function of the people that are there as well. So, you know, we go to the same place, you know, we could be doing the same kind of stuff in terms of training and working and everything like that. But the actual experience will be very different and very personal, I think. So
100%. Yeah, depending on who's actually there, the type of people that you're going to get to work with at that point in time. Who's the guy who runs it? Like, are there people there? Just trying to get a picture of this. Are there people there to like help you
sort of all the
with
time?
Stuff?
Yeah. So there's a full staff there constantly, like sort of local Balinese people who are, you know, sort of running the kitchens and just generally maintaining the place.
Yeah.
My understanding is that it was built by a French guy, actually. I think his name's Nico, but I'm not 100% sure. But my sort of loose recollection of his story was that, you know, he was sort of just traveling and wanted to build and find some place like this, and sort of just came across this area, developed a really good relationship with a couple of the locals, and then just built a plan out with them. And they've got some really cool stuff on their Instagram, which is, you know, Bali Time Chamber, if anyone wants to check it out.
Yeah, we'll check it out for sure.
Where they sort of did a bit of a documentary about that whole process of planning, building, marketing and everything. And some of the stuff they had to do was pretty crazy to get it all together, because they didn't really have any machinery to do it. Like, it's in the mountains.
Yeah.
So it was all sort of hand built, hand dug, and they had to, you know, get supplies and materials in from sort of all over Bali, but internationally as well. So it's a really cool thing they've put together, and, you know, they're doing really well by the looks of it. I think it's constantly sort of booked out. Like, I booked, I mean, it was like 6 months in advance, so that's a fair way by any metrics typically. But yeah, I think typically sort of a month or two out, it's relatively booked most of the time. I think like 150,000 followers on Instagram or something, I think. So it's really sort of taken off, which is cool to see. So
right on. It's a pretty big thing now, isn't it? Kind of these. Well, I've seen more of them pop up, not necessarily just in Bali, but I guess throughout Asia, because it's, I don't know, a pretty cool environment for it. These men's retreats or women's retreats, or some sort of retreat where you can go and better yourself to some degree. What are you aiming for? Like, you obviously booked this on a recommendation, but do you have any goals that you're trying to hit whilst you're over there?
Yeah, definitely, man. Look, like, as I sort of said, like, I'm pretty big on my own personal development, and, you know, a lot's happened over the last sort of 18 months that's really catapulted me in this area, and sort of given me a lot of additional drive and motivation to be the best person I can be. So look, I do have to sort of sit down a little bit more and like flesh out exactly what I'm hoping to get out of the trip. But I think the one of the biggest things is to just completely immerse myself in that environment, you know, disconnect from the outside world as much as I can, and just go ham, like, on sort of like reading. I'm going to do a lot of journaling, sort of reflecting on who I am, who I was, who I want to be, and just trying to use that time of isolation in a way, in this kind of environment, to really just draw a lot of things out and plan. And there will be, you know, a bit of work to do and stuff like that on the business and other things too that, you know, will also, you know, take place and need to occur. So it'll be great just to sort of lock in on the things that, you know, are most important to me at the moment and I'm really trying to work on. But then just connect with the other guys that are there. Like, it's an international thing. People are going to be coming from all over the place who have uniquely different experiences that I can't even really begin to imagine, sort of sitting here in Melbourne, and just try and learn from them and help, you know, hopefully they can learn something from me too.
Sounds like it would be, I mean, I'm interested to hear about it afterward. Maybe we should do another podcast once you actually get back.
I'm down, man. I'm down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that'd be good to hear about it. But I can imagine it's probably entrepreneurial-minded sort of people trying their own businesses, trying to build their own craft or something like that. Would be a large amount of people who are going there. Yeah,
exactly. That's my understanding. Sort of athletes and entrepreneurs, it sort of seems to be like a big sort of draw card. So like, because of the gym and the recovery center and stuff that's set up there too, it sort of attracts, you know, a typical kind of person. And because like there's no drinking, like no smoking, no anything. It is like,
you're not going there to party.
Exactly. Like, it is quite a unique trip in in that sense. So that's naturally just going to attract a pretty specific kind of person as well. Like, you know, like I've been to Bali before in Avenues, and you just go over there and have fun and, you know, enjoy $3 beers and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that certainly has its place and is a lot of fun, and a lot of people do it. But this is completely different for, you know, potentially, at least in our circles or in our demographic, what that place represents, perhaps,
of course.
I suppose. So,
I mean, it's nice to have that environment where, I mean, we were talking about it just before we jumped in here, with how difficult it is sometimes to be able to just find the time, or good quality time, to spend with yourself and actually create some sort of path for your future. Because, I mean, day to day, you got work, you got this, you got that, you got a bunch of things that are taking your attention in literally every direction. And trying to just sit down and think about what you want and how to get there should be like top of the priority list, but it's hard to actually make that happen.
Yeah, it certainly is, man. Like life only gets sort of busier and busier as you get a little bit older and you take on more responsibilities, and you begin to get a better understanding of where you want to go. So you just kind of you run at that typically. But you've got to find a balance with it too, right? Like a sort of, I guess looking on the last sort of 12 months for me, I think like I sort of went pretty extreme one end, like really isolated myself to work on that kind of stuff. And sort of pushed it to an extreme, was like, yeah, okay, like this probably isn't the way I want to be living all the time, you know, but I've,
what did you notice with that?
In terms of like a change in myself, or
I mean, in terms of, I guess, going to the extreme and isolating yourself.
Yeah.
What were the positives? What were the downsides of doing that?
Look, I think like the positives was that, as we were discussing before, it really gave me a good opportunity to just sort of get away from the noise of life, you know, and really kind of reset some of the habits that I had and sort of had fallen into. And naturally it causes a sort of like a reprioritization of the relationships and friendships that you have, because I sort of, you know, you realize that you typically only see some people when you are going out and partying and doing all that kind of stuff. And when I think personally you take your own sort of development, progression, growth a little bit more seriously, you kind of realize that stuff doesn't really mean as much to you as it once did. And you were only doing that to fill a hole in yourself, you know? So you draw back from that sort of frees up, I guess, a lot of mental bandwidth to focus on you. But naturally sort of some relationships fall away as well. So it's just like a bit of a cascading effect. Some of the negatives was of that, I suppose, but I kind of did that with like most things, most sort of relationships and friendships as well. And then you do start to feel like a little bit lonely at times. You're like, shit, you know, have I gone a little bit too far with this? And then you sort of realize like, okay, no, like these are, you know, my people that I enjoy really hanging out with. It's just like, you know, I don't need to be there or present all the time because I've like just got other shit going on, you know, as you know. But when you are there, you're like, okay, sweet. Like I can relax. I can unwind because these are people that I love and that I trust and I really enjoy spending time with.
I want to stick on this topic for a bit because as I was reading some of the things that you'd written, I noticed that you were mentioning tribe a bit, or however people want to describe it. I think tribe's the perfect term for it, but like your community, the collective of people that you spend time with. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that over the last 12, 18 months, you got more catapulted into this sort of thinking. What was the catalyst for that?
Heartbreak, man.
Yeah.
Heartbreak, dude. Yeah. Like I was, you're dating a girl for sort of 18 months. It just didn't work out. And that, it sort of broke me in a lot of ways, dude. Like ultimately, you know, I was sort of the one to call it, still very much in love with her. And we too, like we had a really great relationship in a lot of ways, but things there was a misalignment and I sort of felt myself becoming someone that I didn't really want to be, or someone who I'd been previously and didn't really want to be again. And yeah, just kind of had to make a really tough decision. And it broke my heart, dude. Like it really, really did, man. Like it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever done. And to get pretty real with it, like I remember sort of, you know, after the fact, like a couple of weeks after, just like bawling my eyes out, dude, bawling. And like,
so full broken,
man. And like, that's never really happened before. Like, you know, and sort of staring like into the mirror at myself, just watching myself crying, dude. but also saying to myself, just like, hey man, like I'm really proud of you, like for sort of seeing, I guess, just like sort of putting yourself first a little bit in that regard, and like absolutely zero disrespect,
of course,
to the girl, and she's great, and I hope she's doing really, really well with everything she's doing, and just want to put that out there. So, but yeah, on the back of that, sort of had to rewire myself a little bit, and you know, just sort of embrace, you know, self-love type stuff for a while to sort of help get me through that. And then I viewed that period and sort of most periods since then as a gift to really focus on me. Like there's not too often in life as you get older where you sort of have that intense, raw emotion, but also time and lack of like super serious responsibility to figure things out. So yeah, I've sort of really viewed that, and still do, as a real catalyst for self-improvement. And it's just like, you know I wasn't the man, I didn't show up as the man I would want to be in that relationship at times, and sort of view it like I wasn't necessarily strong enough to help guide things in a way that, you know, maybe things could have been different if I had been, you know, the ideal version of myself, and was sort of got very honest and very, very real with what I viewed as some of my shortcomings in that space, and just been trying to fix it, man.
It's a really good point, and I kind of want to know how you did it, or what sort of process you followed, because once you go through something like that, maybe not everyone, but I've definitely experienced things that can potentially feel similar to that. And once you've been broken, how did you go about taking an honest assessment of yourself? You know, because that's hard. Like if you're not a person at that point in time that you necessarily like, you don't like the way that you're acting, you don't like any of the shit that you're doing, whatever that is. How do you have an honest look and fucking admit it to yourself?
Oh, it's hard, man. It's hard, and it hurts, and it sucks. But no, dude, like I'm very fortunate to have, you know, a lot of incredibly important, self-aware and supportive people sort of around me in my network. And it was through, a lot of conversations, sort of a lot of journaling and a lot of self-reflection on that period as well. And man, like I'm still figuring it out, man. Like it's certainly, you know, it's a lifelong thing. But yeah, like it wasn't, you know, sort of been through like therapy and stuff like that before, and it wasn't something that I ventured back into sort of immediately post that. It's something I've been thinking about a little bit more again, because as you sort of get further, there's just still things that pop up, and it's just like, okay, like I've sort of tried figuring stuff out on my own and with support. Maybe, you know, it is time, or would be beneficial to get some more of that, you know, professional guidance again, just to help put the puzzle together a little bit more, so I can see things clearer. But yeah, it was just a lot of reading, a lot of journaling, a lot of talking, which I think is super important, and something that I hadn't been good at previously. But yeah, just relying on other people, man, and not trying to purely rely on yourself, I think is really important. Like, I mean, especially as guys, right? Like it gets spoken about a lot that there's almost this like inherent sort of feeling that we don't want to put our problems on other people, and it's, you know, our responsibility to sort of figure shit out for ourselves. But sort of you kind of got to get over that a little bit and like just rely on your boys, you know, and
of course,
and like we would all do it for our friends, like always. So it's just like, why is there a hesitation to do it for yourself in some way?
It's a good point, hey, especially I've thought about this heaps because I feel like one of the reasons why it's hard is if you've gone through something and you're not necessarily the person that you want to be, you feel ashamed of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You feel ashamed, and then going and fucking complaining about it to somebody else makes you feel even more ashamed in so many ways, right? So it just kind of compounds it in a lot of ways. So it makes it so hard because all you want to be is, well, all I've wanted to be in those times is just someone who can handle it.
Yeah. Someone
who doesn't need to talk about it because I've got it.
Yeah.
But you're right. There comes a point where you got to just let it out to someone.
Got to bite the bullet, man. Yeah, 100%. And like, it's interesting, like sort of as you were saying that, this idea of just like spiraling came to mind, you know, because you can it's very easy to spiral downwards and things can get out of control pretty quickly when you're going through any sort of traumatic experience, whatever it may be. And something like I've sort of done a lot of work on previously as well is just, you know, improving self-talk, noticing when you are feeling unstable. Unstable is a strong word, but you know what I mean. And just identifying that and be like, all right, okay, I know where this leads. If I continue this train of thought and I continue these thought patterns, I gotta switch it up. You know, who can I talk to? And very quickly, like, if you have sort of good friendships in your life, which I understand, like a lot of people don't, which is pretty unfortunate. But when you do have that good network, people will be able to pick you up and sort of help correct your course pretty quickly. Of
course, because I mean, that same trigger going through a heartbreak or whatever experience you've gone through that's really destabilized your life. You can either go down the personal development path, which it seems like you've done that, or you can go down the self-sabotage path and just party and drink and be a fucking idiot, basically.
And I've done that before too, bro. Like, like that's what I mean. Like, I've been.
How do you make that choice of which way you're going?
I think it's experience, man. I think a lot of it, I guess, reflecting on my journey is experience. Like, I've gone down that path, sort of spiraled and gotten out of control and did a lot of stupid shit. And, you know, after a while, again, upon reflection and sort of chatting to people, just realized that wasn't me and that wasn't making me happy. It was just, you know, a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, sort of just masking, you know, what I was actually feeling and going through these, you know, dopamine hits and everything like that. So, yeah, it was like reflecting on that and be like, all right, I know what I'm not going to do this time.
Yeah.
How can I do things differently?
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's great that, you know, there are more and more of these kind of conversations happening, especially between dudes, right? It's in general social settings, online, and it's a lot less taboo to sort of use that word than it potentially had been, you know, a few years ago when this wonderful thing called the internet wasn't so popular.
Full on.
Yeah.
100%, man. And I mean, the reason why I'm doing this is because I think like deep, long form conversations are one of the best things ever. Like the amount of knowledge and healing and everything that I've received from just having a good conversation with somebody, like there's almost nothing better.
Yeah.
Nothing really seems to beat it, I guess. But it's difficult for a lot of people. I don't know if you've like sat down and tried to have a deep conversation with someone and people fucking sabotage them.
Yeah.
Like you start to dip under the surface a little bit and people, it gets really uncomfortable for some people. And rightly so, I guess, but people sabotage good conversations quickly.
Absolutely, man. And it is very interesting to sort of watch, right? There are very specific types of people who you can have these conversations with. And yeah, it's not hard to tell, I think, after a little while, whether or not they sort of have done a little bit of self-reflection or at least interested in this kind of dialogue rather than just, you know, surface level, like, oh, did you watch the footy on the weekend? Like, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, I think that's becoming more prevalent. But you're right. Like, people just like don't want a bar of it a lot of the time.
Not at all.
But yeah. But what's interesting is like, I found like with some people who would in a group setting not be interested in having that kind of conversation. But if you catch them one-on-one, like I've had conversations with heaps of guys who they're very different people, you know, when there's others around and when it's just the two of us or something like that, you know. So
I could not agree more. Like I mean, when it comes to guys, it's like there's a big group, everyone's getting boisterous.
Yeah.
There's a lot of flexing to be done. But most people one-on-one are great.
Yeah.
I've found most people one-on-one are great. It's when you get people in groups that everyone starts being shit for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after you went through this, you've identified the things that you want to change or what you don't like about yourself. How do you go about actually implementing this stuff? And I want to tie it back into the tribe side of things, because I feel like one of the most difficult things about changing as a person and moving through life is changing the friendships and the connections that you have and having to say no to some friendships, basically. You said that they naturally change, but did you have to go through a process of elimination or actually cutting people out of your life?
Not necessarily. Like there hasn't been, you know, any conversation where it's just like, hey man, like I'm not going to see you anymore. You know what I mean? It's just been sort of a natural effect. And I think a lot of that I think all of this starts with you, right? And it's just reprioritizing how you want to spend your time and, you know, what is important to you. So like a good example of that is, I guess, like I come from, you know, a high performance sort of elite swimming background. So like just have this baseline level of discipline and commitment that, you know, has been instilled in me sort of over the years. And it was just getting in touch with that again has really helped a lot. So like I take my gym and I'm sort of fighting and stuff like that again now incredibly seriously. And as a function of that, you know, I don't really drink too much. I don't really party too much anymore. So you just stop going to stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And because of that, you know, you just naturally don't start talking to people, or, you know, the only reason you might have been talking to them was to organize, you know, what they're doing on a Friday or Saturday night. So just kind of gradually falls away. And I think as you keep trying new stuff for you and exploring your own, what's the word? Like exploring different avenues of what you think you might enjoy. You know, you try stuff, you meet some people, maybe that wasn't for you, and that's fine. You just keep trying. But eventually, like, you find the things that are important to you and you love doing for you. And I think that just sort of changes something internally, you know, like it increases your vibration, you know, to sort of use that term. And naturally, people just kind of start noticing what you're doing, and you just draw people in. Like you just attract the types of people because you are living life the way you want to live. And people who are also doing that, you just innately have something in common, I feel like, because like there is no, at least from my experience, like expectation for you to do anything that is not in alignment with sort of those ideals or values. So like when you do catch up, there's no like pressure, there's no bullshit like, man, what the fuck, like where have you been the last 2 months? So you just kind of like, you wash away a lot of that superficial kind of stuff, and you just appreciate the time that you have with them. And yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think it's kind of just a natural progression and just finding your people naturally.
How do you think you identify the right people? Because that can be pretty hard, hey? Like going through your teen years, and then sometimes you carry on those same friendships into early adulthood. Sometimes they're friendships that are going to last a lifetime, or they're friendships that aren't going to last for whatever reason. But now you're a little bit older. How do you personally identify the people that you want to be around? Like what are the key signs that you get from the way that you guys communicate together?
Man, I think it's just like having an underlying desire to grow, and like that there is, like, none of us are perfect, and we all are striving to improve in certain areas. They could be completely different areas, but just having an appreciation that life is a journey and we're never going to arrive at like a finished product.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, that's, and when you can sort of have deep conversations about what people have been up to, what they've been working on, issues they've been struggling with, and just chat about it. Like those are the types of conversations that I find incredibly fulfilling and I'm just naturally drawn to. And by extension, like those are the people that you just kind of find yourself making more of an effort to see than otherwise, because there is value to be shared. Like not to view it in such a transactional sense, but it's just like,
of course,
I'm getting something, you're getting something, and like we're all working towards a bigger picture. And it's just a whole lot more interesting, man, to like hang out with those kind of people.
Yeah.
Like, because like it's not watching the footy or something like that, or, you know, I've used that a couple of times, but it's just like
superficial stuff.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, of course. You mentioned you were doing fighting. So have you started that?
I have, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
what have you been doing?
I've been training Muay Thai. Muay Thai, Muay Thai. I still can't. People tell me different pronunciations all the time. So I've been doing that 2 or 3 times a week for the last couple of months.
Sick.
Yeah, it's been awesome, man. I fucking love it. Been doing that at the Melbourne Fight Club in the city, which is sort of just along Flinders Street in like those kind of vaults, if you know where that is. So yeah, like my gym's, you know, right next door too. So I train there in the morning and then go and fight at lunch, which is, it's a skill that I've sort of always wanted to learn for a variety of reasons, but it's also just such a good outlet, and to be actively learning and pushing myself and just being comfortable again with the idea that there's always something I'm going to be shit at, and you just got to put effort into like learning and training and just, you know, remaining a student. Yeah, I think is such an important feeling too.
Have you ever done any type of martial arts or anything like that previously?
So I did, back end of 2019, I did like probably 4 or 5 months of boxing. I was sort of doing that, 3 or 4 mornings a week. But then 2020 COVID happened, and that kind of just fell away. And, you know, it was, I came across some of my notes the other day. It was like 2022 New Year's resolutions, you know, start a martial art. And as some of these things tend to happen, it sort of fell by the wayside. But, you know, over Christmas, New Year's, when I spent a few days by myself in the bush, was like, nah, this is like one of my goals for this year is to learn this skill, and then, you know, to have like an amateur fight in either Muay Thai or boxing, sort of by November of this year. So
that's the goal.
That's the goal, man. That's
Sick.
the goal. So yeah, there's this thing called the corporate fighter, which I've been looking at pretty closely. Had a few conversations with them, and they're just sort of waiting to confirm dates and stuff like that. But it's like a 10-week sort of training program with like the whole group of people who have also signed up. And at the end of it, you get matched up with someone who's at like, you know, an equitable level skill set. And they put on like a big fight night and like all this kind of shit. It looks dope.
The corporate fighter.
Yeah, the corporate fighter.
That sounds mad.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool, man. They do a pretty good job of it from what I've seen. So when that gets announced, I'm pretty keen to sign up for that and just fuck it. Like, why not, man? Why not?
So you're going to do it in Muay Thai?
It'll probably be just boxing, that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, typically I do Muay Thai Tuesday, Thursday lunchtimes. And because I train legs Wednesday morning. So I was doing like Muay Thai kickboxing, you know, Wednesday lunchtime, and it was killing me. So I was sort of trying to do boxing on that day and just give the legs a bit of a rest.
Yeah. So. That's sick, man. That's awesome. How's it been transitioning into Muay Thai? Because I know you've been weightlifting pretty intensely for like how long now? I mean, you probably already always trained pretty hard if you were doing swimming. Yeah,
I've sort of like been in the gym in like a swimming capacity sort of most of my life. I think we started doing like dry land when I was like 10 or 11. But that was like sort of very functional type lifting. It wasn't the bodybuilding that I'm doing now. So yeah, sort of 17, 18 years in the gym, but really the last sort of nearly 2 years has been like bodybuilding type lifting. And yeah, man, my hips are cooked. Like I've always had like tight hips and glutes and stuff like that. So trying to learn how to kick properly it's an ongoing process.
Getting the flexibility up.
Exactly.
How's it been with other people there? Do you feel like you walked in and you knew what you were doing, or you were getting the shit kicked out of you by smaller people?
Yeah.
Or is that a myth? Did it not happen?
No, well, there's quite a diverse sort of skill set within the classes and stuff like that, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of definitely walked in and didn't know what I was doing, but fortunate enough that the guys or the people that are there, like are really generous, and because a lot of it's just sort of like pad work type stuff. So you're working with someone that will be, punching, kicking and stuff for 15, 20 minutes, doing different combos, and then like you'll switch. So it's been working with a couple of guys who are regularly there and have been training for years. Yeah. Sort of like we were doing something and they'll kind of stop, give me a few pointers. So it's just that collaborative sort of learning environment. Yeah. But yeah, now I've been doing it for a few months, sort of picked up quite a lot, I think, in that time. And yeah, it is cool to notice your progression in yourself, but then when someone new joins and you just kind of see, it's just like, I've been there before, and that's where it's important to be like, hey man, like try this out. I'm still learning. Like I really don't know what the fuck I'm doing either, but like this is kind of what I was told. Yeah, give it a whirl, see if it makes sense.
Just go kick the shit out of them for an ego boost. Like, suck it.
Yeah, exactly. No, none of that, not yet anyway. So
how does it feel walking in? Obviously, like what do you weigh at the moment?
I'm about 102.5 at the moment.
Yeah, fuck yeah. So obviously, and I feel like it's good to note this because in martial arts, it can quickly get into a conversation of skill supersedes everything. Yeah. Right? Like as long as you got the skill, it's gonna work against anyone, any size, any strength, which I don't believe at all. But how have you felt walking in there being pretty big and pretty athletic when it comes to balancing that out with skill?
Yeah, I mean, like it's interesting. I mean, like I am one of the bigger dudes there pretty consistently. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to be getting hit by some of the guys that are in there. That's for damn sure. And even like last night, hanging out with sort of Jay and Geordie, like our mates, Jay, who sort of had sort of years of practice in this area, we were just mucking around, sort of just throwing a few kicks just to like test technique and stuff. And man, his like shins, dude, or his like sort of lower leg is bony, man, and that just hurt, bro. Like so. Yeah, it is super interesting. They've got a level of quickness that I just sort of don't really have. Yeah. So, if I've got a glass jaw, man, then I'll find out pretty quickly and just hear this loud thud hit the deck. So like
do you So when you're training throughout the week, do you do sparring or it's mainly pad work?
Mainly pad work. They have sparring sessions Friday night and I think on Saturdays sometimes. But I haven't made it down there yet. The plan is to eventually, but just with the way the schedule and stuff is at the moment, so I haven't made the time to get there. Yeah,
of course.
Because that's the next progression too. And so like I want to have like a pretty decent skill set and just ability before sort of stepping into that. Not that you'd get seriously hurt, but it is like another dynamic too when someone's actually like throwing stuff at you and you're not just thinking about what you're doing.
I mean, and just getting hit in the head like a lot isn't great. So trying to balance it out with training as high level as you can and getting as close to the real thing as you can without getting like repetitive brain damage for no fucking reason when like you're probably never going to be in a real, like if you're going to get in a real fight throughout your life, it's probably going to happen like a handful of occasions.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard trying to I think about that a bunch of it's just like, when you're living in a pretty safe society, we're not in a war-torn zone at the moment, not really living in a place where hopefully, touch wood, you're going to have to be getting in like physical confrontations on a daily basis. Yeah. So like balancing out that of like how worth it is it to be able to learn these skills and go through the punishment of fighting and going through potentially the damage of getting hit in the head a lot over like a long period of time to kick the fuck out of like two people. in your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. I
don't know the answer, but I just sometimes think about it like, what's worth it?
Yeah,
you know?
Is it really worth it? Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, man. But sort of, I view it as just like it's a skill. You'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
For sure.
And like, like we want to be fathers one day and sort of raise a family and have a wife. It's just like, I want to be a man capable of violence, but not needing to ever really, really display that. But I think like having that baseline level of lethality is an incredibly important skill to have, because like, dude, you don't know what's going to happen, or like shit goes wrong all the time. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just want to be like the strongest kind of version of myself in all areas, so I'm able to deal with any kind of situation or any problem that arises. And that applies to everything, physical, mental, financial, everything. Like just try and really be that dude. Be
the man.
Yeah.
100%. Why not?
Why exactly, dude? Like what is the point of life if it's not to be the best version of yourself?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And there's definitely no benefit from being incapable.
Yeah.
Like I don't you can argue about the benefits of knowing how to fight, or being super strong, or being super fast, or being super smart, or being super rich. You can argue about these things, but you can definitely not argue for not being.
Yeah, like what's the downside?
Things.
Like
there isn't. I don't think there's a downside.
Exactly.
Definitely not.
Exactly. And like, as I think it's an old maybe Chinese saying, I'm not sure, but I know I got this from Jordan Peterson. He's like, you'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. So it's just kind of that mentality, I suppose. And like training and stuff like that, like you've been doing a fair bit of training too, right?
Fair bit.
Yeah.
Fair bit over the past, since COVID ended, it definitely got into it.
Yeah.
Into
huge.
it more.
And like you sort of, as you know, you get it's humbling as fuck.
Yeah.
And B, you sort of have a greater appreciation for what other people can do, because like you could be walking down, in the street, whatever, or something happens when you're out, and maybe if you hadn't had the experiences that you had, you wouldn't stop and think like, hang on, this dude could really fuck me up here. Like, I don't know what kind of training he's done or what he's capable of.
100%. I mean, especially when you go in any martial arts gym and you see what people actually look like.
Yeah.
And it can be anything. Like some people are so good, and you're looking at this guy like, if I was sitting on the bus with you, you would never know. You would never know that this dude's an assassin, like a trained killer, but he just looks like some like tech nerd or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's given me an appreciation of like, don't judge people just off the way that they look, because they could be dangerous. I guess that's for
100%,
sure.
bro. 100%.
One of the struggles that I've come across in the last like year or two, which I didn't find as much being like 18 to 22 in training, is just like how much I've been getting hurt in training, like, I don't know, your body doesn't recover in the same way. Just like constantly, I feel like I'm pulling muscles, and just like I broke my toe. I feel like I broke this toe like a couple of weeks ago just from like getting stepped on, just dumb shit like that. And it's like, I swear this didn't happen when I was like 20.
Yeah, man, we're nearly 30, bro. Like it's just is creeping up on us pretty quickly, huh? But I mean, you're doing jiu-jitsu, right? That's you're getting contorted in different ways that you normally wouldn't.
I feel like I don't know. I'm not very good at jiu-jitsu, and I haven't gone that hard. So definitely haven't been hurt as much in that. And I think it feels a lot more controlled in a lot of ways, unless somebody actually just wants to hurt you and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Like getting hurt accidentally, I feel like hasn't happened. But when people are sparring and kicking each other and just like wobbling all over the place, and there's like 20 people in the room.
Yep.
Doing that, I swear, accidental shit happens.
That's a good
all
point.
the time.
Yep.
Especially when you're training with untrained people. Like that's the worst part. Like you're training with someone who isn't trained and like don't have control over their body. So you're like trying to work with them, and then they'll just fucking hit you out of nowhere. And you're like, wait, what are we doing?
What are you doing, bro?
What are we doing here? Like, I need to be able to think tomorrow.
Yeah. You got to be wary of it for sure. For sure.
So tell me Tell me about the business venture, man, because I just want to get like we've spoken about it a little bit, but I guess I just want to get a full comprehensive understanding of what you're working on, if you don't mind talking about it.
No, dude, of course.
I think it's pretty cool. And I mean, I guess there's anybody trying to do anything on their own at the moment, I'm always interested in and impressed by. So you've got a day job. Mm-hmm. What do you do for your day job? What's your technical credentials?
I'm an investment analyst.
An investment analyst.
Yeah. So I work at one of Australia's largest super funds, and I'm an investment analyst in their private markets team. So we invest in unlisted infrastructure, which is sort of airports, toll roads,
unlisted infrastructure.
Unlisted infrastructure.
What does unlisted mean?
So yeah, good question. So listed is the company or the stock trades on a stock exchange, like the ASX, or the New York Stock Exchange, whatever it may be. So it's listed in a domain like that.
Yeah.
Unlisted is that it's a private company. So you can't just, pull up an app on your phone, buy some shares, and you own a piece of that company. You've actually got to go through, quite a long process and buy a stake of that company, either from the company itself or from, another investor who owns some.
So if it's a public company, anyone can go on and buy a piece of it.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
That's how it works, right?
Pretty much, man. Yeah. You just sign up for sort of a trading account, give them your details, put some money in, and then typically, you can have it in like 5 minutes.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're on the unlisted side of things. So what do you have to do? You have to like call an airport and be like, hey, we want to buy some of it. How does that work? Excuse me for my ignorance. I have no idea about this stuff.
Not at all, dude. Not at all. Not exactly. Typically because of the size of the superannuation industry in Australia, and it's something that we all compulsorily have to contribute to. I think it's sort of 11% of your income naturally gets distributed to the super fund of your choice. So these businesses are constantly growing. There's a constant inflow of funds coming in from its members. There is some outflow for people who are in retirement, and if people switch funds and stuff like that. But the position that we're in is a strong one where our inflows are a lot greater than our outflows. So we constantly have money coming in that needs to be deployed in order to generate a return for our members, for our investors, so their retirement, is going to be a fruitful one. So the way it works is, it's different in every fund, but ours is segregated into Australian equities, so Australian listed stocks. So that's companies that are listed on the ASX typically. Then there's global listed equities, and they're listed on various stock exchanges around the world. There is fixed income, which is sort of government bonds, private debt, private bonds too. Then there's the property team, which is office, retail, and industrial.
Yeah.
And then there's us, sort of private markets. And we look after, unlisted infrastructure, as I was saying, and private equity too. So the process of sort of getting into some of our unlisted infrastructure assets is we're constantly having investors or companies sort of approach us wanting us to invest in them. So we don't...
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't do a lot of sort of outward lead gen, let's call it. Like a lot of it is coming to us because they know that there's a lot of money there that they all want access to.
That makes sense that instead of you wanting them, it's them wanting you.
Yeah, correct.
If you're like this massive fund that's continuously getting money.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
like, don't get me wrong, there is like some, industries or sectors that we would have a preference to get into. And, we may make a little bit more of an effort to approach or to get into those areas. But the far majority of it is people coming to us, giving us presentations about whatever the asset is. And then it's up to us to decide, whether or not we we pursue it any further and sort of do our due diligence and our research and explore it, or just say, look, no, this isn't something we're interested in at the time.
So if it's a company that you do want to work with, do you have to cut essentially like a deal of what you're going to buy, what you're going to get in return?
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing individually with each company.
Exactly.
And this is how you try and work out what sort of profit you can make for everybody?
Yeah, pretty much. So mainly, yeah. So there's a few different strategies and stuff like that sit behind it. Either you can like invest directly into a company, or you can invest in another fund, and that fund will have invested in a whole bunch of different companies. Oh. So it's just like, it's layers. Yeah. But like our strategy, our preference is to go directly into companies and align with managers who can sort of manage our investment. And that way it gives us a little bit more just governance rights and insight into what's happening, rather than sort of going through someone else to then go to the company, or, sort of get further down like that.
Oh, that makes sense. And if you're going through another fund, then they're kind of a middleman for you to some degree, right? So they're making cash in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. There's fees and stuff like that are laid onto.
I don't know how much we're allowed to talk about, so I'm hesitant on what I bring up.
No, man, go for it, man.
Where do I put my money?
Yeah. Hey, man, I just want to say that, none of this is investment advice. Just
no investment advice or banking advice or medical advice or education advice yet. We're going to advise.
Strictly educational purposes only. Yeah. But yeah, like it is when you go down that route, which people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different preference for, the type of business and the strategy that you want to run. But the way that we prefer to go about things is to go directly. And yeah, just create alignment with ourselves and with the company. So there is, just sort of more open lines of communication. There's no fees. And we feel as well that by having sizable chunks directly in companies, that sort of gives you, board seats and other government rights that would typically attract a bit of a premium if and when you want to sell out of that asset. And you can do that whenever you sort of want to. It takes a while to exit a business, but you can be the one who sort of pulls the trigger, whereas funds, they operate a little bit differently.
Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, man, I do.
Like it?
Yeah, I do enjoy it, man. It's it really is a privilege to sort of work with some incredibly smart people, and the environment that it is super collaborative. Everyone's really helpful, and just with the size of the deals that we're working on, sometimes like we did a deal earlier last year where we bought like sort of a percentage of a large European telecommunications towers business for like $1 billion. Like we wrote $1 billion check and said, hey, thank you very much. Like, whoa, yeah, it's mind boggling, man. Like just very, very honored and very privileged to have been given this opportunity to work with some incredible people and really make a difference in people's lives, right? At the forefront of sort of every investment decision that we make along with the team and sort of the broader approvals sort of team and process is the fact that we're dealing with people's superannuation,
It's a really big deal.
Yeah, dude. It's 100%, man. Like if you fuck it up, like shit goes bad for a lot of people very quickly. So, sort of the number one like value is that, superannuation equals life savings. So like you've really got to look at it that way rather than just you've got all this money, like that's just kind of throw it at shit. Like
it's time. It's like it's time, people's time and energy.
Yeah, that's what money is, right?
Essentially.
Yeah, that's what money is. People's money is a storage of people's time.
Yeah,
essentially.
And people are spending all of their lives working away under this assumption that they're given when they're like 20 or 30 years old, that if they do the right thing until 60, 70 years old, then they're going to have this nest egg, right?
Yep.
Is it stressful?
Look, at times, certainly. I think a big philosophy of mine, though, is to manage that stress through physical activity. Like there's a reason that, aside from sort of general aesthetics, I suppose, like, that I do like train really hard in the morning, and that's what I start my day with, because like, I know that I've sort of punished myself and expended a lot of sort of physical energy there. And that's like the hardest thing that I have to do, really. Like throughout the day, stuff might happen and stuff could go wrong. Absolutely. But it's a different kind of stress, because I have this baseline tolerance for pain, I guess. Let's sort of describe it that way. That like it helps put things into perspective. And because as well, it is such a supportive and collaborative environment. It is like it's a team effort. Like, so there is, our team of 6 people and a broader team of sort of 60 people, and then a bigger sort of overarching a committee, investment committee, that's sort of like, it goes through multiple layers of review and approval before you ultimately deploy capital. So there's just a wealth of experience and knowledge there to lean on and utilize. As someone especially who's relatively early in their career, having access to those kind of people sort of helps, disperse a lot of that stressful energy.
Yeah, it's not all on your shoulders, like every decision. Yeah. And so then that leads into the business that you're building at the moment for everybody. If you could just give us like a brief description of what this is, like how it works.
Yeah, man, absolutely, man. So what we're building, we're calling it Prestige Leads. So it's an AI database reactivation agency. So we all know, AI is a crazy hot topic and a super new and useful technology that's here to stay if used in the right way. So Jacob and I, we sort of really put our heads together quite a while ago now and figured, all right, like how can this isn't going anywhere. We really like just using the technology in our own sort of personal and professional lives. There's a way to create value here for people on a larger scale. So what can we do? So what we've built, with the help of some mentors and a community as well, who are trying to build and figure out this kind of business model, is a sort of purpose-built software platform that leverages a couple of different pieces of software, where we approach clients who typically are spending a large amount of money on ads or purchasing lead lists from lead vendors, where the lead vendor is generating the leads through whatever avenue it is people are opting in, and then that vendor sells that lead to the business. Yeah. So people who are constantly advertising, looking to grow, whether it be a service or a product based business, it doesn't really matter. So what we found is that these businesses typically have a lot of leads coming in that their sales team is, of course, dialing or reaching out to and connecting with in whatever way. And they'll close some of them, absolutely. Not all of them, though, naturally. You've worked in sales, you know what the grind is, how hard it can be. And those leads that weren't converted at the time are typically sort of cast aside and forgotten about, because they do have this constant stream of new data and new interest coming in. So over time, that database just grows naturally of these people and they've already bought these leads. That's just a sunken cost, really, for
leads aren't cheap.
Yeah, exactly right. And at some point, those people were interested. Otherwise, they wouldn't have opted in and said, yeah, I'm interested in the product or the service. I want to know more. It's just, maybe they were busy at the time. It wasn't the right time for them. They had some other stuff going on. There's a million different reasons for why they didn't buy whatever it was. So we approach our clients and say, look, you've got this database here. We've built a system where if you can give us a copy of that database, we can put it into sort of the CRM that we've built and is essentially yours. Like we partner with our clients and they have access to everything. So it's not like they're giving us their data, like it's still their data. And we put it through the system and it reaches out to the individual directly via a text message. And all we need is name, number, and email typically. And you can tailor it and add in sort of a lot of the bells and whistles to make it more specific depending on what the business is, what the industry is. But yeah, it reaches out to them over text message and just to really re-engage that lead and initiate a conversation. And with the quality of the technology in AI and things like that these days, and the amount of time and effort we've put into training our system and really dialing it in and getting it very, very authentic. Like it just has a conversation with them about the business, can handle sort of any objections, answer any questions that the person may have, all with the ultimate goal of either booking them on a sales call for the client, or if they're selling a product, sending them a discount code or something like that, and then a link to the website or however our client wants to go about it.
Okay, yeah.
So
no shit. So how do you go about training an AI bot to communicate with people? Like where do you begin with that?
Yeah. I mean, man,
it's like having a pet.
Yeah. Yeah. It's messy at the start. That's for sure. And look, man, like to be honest, we've sort of leveraged a lot of the teachings. Like we haven't done this entirely ourselves, like started from scratch, like sort of watched a lot of videos, watched a lot of content and learnt from some people who are pretty far ahead of us in this space about just the infrastructure that you need to set up and how to set it up. But then also the training of the bot sort of through prompt engineering and things like that. So I know you've sort of mucked around with ChatGPT a lot before, and I imagine a lot of the viewers or listeners have as well. So what you put into, you've got your ChatGPT sort of screen, what you put into the initial message, like is what's known as the prompt. And what's become clearer and clearer over the last sort of 18 months, however long this technology has been out now, is that the quality of a response depends on the quality of the prompt or the quality of the input. So it's really about just constantly drafting, testing, and improving the quality of the input. So our prompts now are like 3 or 4 pages long, which really sort of sets out, the tone of the bot that we want it to speak in. It has to be a little bit empathetic, not super like conversational, but not too serious. Don't use slang, like these kind of things. So it's like a lot of the tonality, the type of language to use, whether it's US English, British English, whatever it may be, and sort of the vernacular around that as well. Sorry. So like, to use an example, like if it's a US based client, you wouldn't throw in a lot of our language like mate or so that kind of stuff. Like it is nation specific, just a general way of talking. So there's that, and then you train it on sort of a lot of the FAQs of the business. Business information, some FAQs, the services that they offer, some of the products that they offer, and then it's setting out in a sequential order, I guess because we are the ones sending at least the first message, you can frame the conversation in a certain way. So sort of the first message is typically confirming details and getting them to opt in to receive sort of further information through the end, just by asking a question. And then they'll typically respond sort of yes or no, to use an easy example. And then we've sort of trained it and tailor it to each business. If there is, 1 or 2, maybe even 3 sort of questions that they would like to ask, just to confirm that the lead is actually engaged and to sort of re-qualify them. And then at the end of that sequence, it'll sort of, ask them to lock in a time for a call or send them a booking link, whatever it may be.
So it just keeps closing down like the possibilities essentially.
Yeah.
To set something up.
Yeah, exactly. Like its primary goal or its primary objective, which we've given it sort of through the training is to book a sales call. So it always is trying to bring the conversation back to that. And again, there's training on how to ensure that it does that too. But of course, when you're dealing with people, it's never going to be, yes, I'm interested. That sounds great.
Yeah.
I can do that.
One in every 1,000, it's just perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Like people are sort of always asking different questions, whatever it may be, or sort of, giving different scenarios for about, why now might not be the best time. And of course, if they flat out say no, then like you respect that and you don't hassle the fuck out of people.
Yeah.
But again, that's where the importance and the impressiveness of the technology comes into play, because you still give it a little bit of leeway, because you want it to be natural and conversational. You don't want it to be robotic.
So as you're training this thing, let's say you chuck a prompt in and then it gives you an answer.
Yeah.
You just keep layering it with more nuance that you're going for. Just like, make it a little bit shorter, make it like a little bit more cheerful, or make it a little bit more serious, and you just keep layering it until it gets like morphed into exactly what you're going for.
Exactly. So
it's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it's been fun, man. It's been a cool process. So sort of one of the clients we're working with pretty closely at the moment, who's really helped us sort of dial this in that exact way you just described. Initially when we first sort of set it live, it had a little bit too much leeway and wasn't responding to things in the desirable or in the way that we wanted. So it is just like sort of sitting there, at night at the end of the day, rereading a lot of the conversations that it's had during that day, and then going back into sort of the back end of the system, retesting things, telling it what it, like you might feed it an objection or you might feed it an example of a conversation and tell it, don't say this, say this instead. And then you sort of test that, again in the back end, and then just kind of set it live again. So it is a bit of an iterative process to really sort of get it dialed in. But now where we're at with a couple of the products for some specific businesses is that it just goes now. Like we just kind of feed it the information that it needs, and then it just runs in the background. And
so it's smart enough at this point to know what's going on.
Exactly. It's been potty trained, So like it's sort of it has been a process to sort of get it to that point, but it's been really, really fun, really engaging, and really rewarding. So
why did you want to even go down this path? Because obviously it sounds like a lot of energy and effort that you're putting in your spare time. You're training as well. Yeah. Sounds like you got a lot of shit going on.
The schedule's pretty full.
Yeah. Why would you want to go down this path? Because it sounds like you got a good job as well.
Yeah.
There'd be no need to in that respect in terms of being able to set up a pretty good life.
Yeah.
Why would you want to build a business on top of that? What's the incentive?
Well, look, man, I think it's just building a different set of skills. And I think being an entrepreneur is almost the highest form of self-development that you can kind of pursue, because you get to a stage where, if you are fortunate enough to get there where, you kind of step away and you just kind of focus purely on the business that you've built. And then all of a sudden, we talk about the importance of self-responsibility and self-accountability and all this kind of stuff. It was just like, once you get there, it truly is just you to figure it the fuck out and make it work, or else everything else will suffer. With the jobs that we all have, they're great and there's some incredible opportunities, but there's always that safety net there. Not always, but there is a safety net there. Of course, you may get made redundant or lose your job or whatever. But it's sort of, there is a safety net whilst you still have it. So it's just about constantly pushing yourself, I think, to achieve more. And then, there is the side of it too, where it's just like, if you are the one who owns and operates the business, you are naturally or typically going to make more money than what you would in your 9 to 5. So there is like a financial aspect to it.
Yeah,
certainly. And sort of the freedom and stuff that can be generated sort of through by pursuing something for yourself. But there's also sort of that, that personal development, self-responsibility type work too. And I think for a lot of people, like sort of COVID was a really big eye opener for that, right? Where everything was shut down. A lot of people couldn't work for what ended up being, years.
Years, basically, yeah.
Like, that was fucked. And you kind of realize the fragile nature of the system that we operate in. And, something like that, heaven forbid, was to happen again. If you have another source of income that is, a digital sort of online business, you can just bounce, right? And just move to somewhere else where it's not happening. So there's like another sort of layer of freedom potential in there as well.
So did you, prior to COVID happening, did you feel like you wanted to take this sort of path, or wasn't thinking about it as much?
I probably wasn't thinking about it as much, man.
Because there's nothing wrong with getting a good job on a salary with something you might not have to take home after 5 o'clock quite as much. There's something to be said for that for a lot of people.
100%, man. Yeah. 100%. Like it's definitely not
benefits and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely not a bad avenue to pursue by any means. Like going down, the path that we're going down now isn't for everyone. Like, it's fucking hard. And there is so much sort of time, energy, and just sacrifice that goes into that I completely and like, I'm just starting, like, you know what I mean? It's not this, I haven't been doing this for years, and it's still in its infancy. And I can only imagine it's going to get harder and harder as we continue to grow and develop, the business. But something that's become pretty apparent already is like, it's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, because it's super hard, and like, that's completely okay. It doesn't have to be. So yeah.
Because you got your skin in the game, right? Like you were mentioning, all the accountability and all the failure and all the success is on you. Like, if you fuck it up, you actually fuck it up. You're going to deal with the consequences. But if you're successful, you get to reap the benefits of that as well. And you mentioned the freedom side of things. What's the main goal in terms of that? Like, are you trying to build some sort of life where you're freer than what a 9 to 5 could potentially bring you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. I think, however long it takes, again, like, I really enjoy my job. Very fortunate and grateful for the opportunity and position that I'm in. But yeah, man, I think a big part of me just needs to at least know what it's like to have built something like this, and just taste that life.
Just want to see what it feels like.
I've got to find out, man. I have to find out, and I will find out.
I mean, at least if you go as hard as you can and you do it, and then you find it's not for you, then you can kick back with a good job and be satisfied.
Yeah, exactly.
With that life.
Exactly.
But I guess if there's part of you that's like looking down the tunnel and being like, that looks pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, dude. Like, it's just something I've got to figure out and got to find out for myself.
Do you think something like COVID's going to happen again? Like, is that a worry?
Yes. Yeah. Maybe not in the same fashion that it did, but I think it really sort of set the precedent for what a society will typically put up with. And yeah, I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole if you want, but yeah, I think
let's fucking do it.
Yeah, I think it sort of like was setting the stage for what can potentially come, right? Like, I think if you kind of look at what else is happening with, all these like net zero targets and stuff like that, and the transition and the implementation, a lot of like smart cities and smart zones in certain areas, it just feels off to me. And there's already a foundation for that sort of complete control that a lot of people bought into. And I mean, shit, I did too for a while. Like, we all succumb to that in some degree.
Of course.
And like, I don't ever want to have to feel or go through that again. Like, that really pissed me off. Yeah, I was not a happy man for most of that time. So it's just like,
what happened in that time for you? Like, what did you feel like was happening to your life because of the lockdowns?
Oh, it just felt robbed, man, like completely robbed, you know, like, I mean, I was, again, few sort of friends didn't buy the full story that we were being told, you know, pretty early on. And just thought there was something else. There was another agenda, you know, I guess to put it that way, that was occurring. And regardless of that or not, you know, I think Benjamin Franklin said this. It's like, someone who would give up freedom for safety deserves neither. Something like that.
Someone who would give up freedom for safety deserves neither.
Yep. So it's just like at the pinnacle of everything, you know, I think freedom of choice is one of the most important things that we as humans have the right to do. And we were completely stripped of that. Again, like personal opinions aside, like that is the fact. Like we were stripped of that.
Yeah.
Me personally, I don't think we should ever be stripped of that because we're all adults. We can all make our own decisions. I didn't, you know, we didn't sign up and appoint a government for them to have the right to do that. A lot of people feel differently, and then that's perfectly okay. That's just my personal opinion on the matter. So yeah, whether or not it happens again, if it happens again, and in what capacity it may happen, that's kind of irrelevant. It's just like the fact that it did, like we never would have thought that would be possible before.
Blindsided.
Completely blindsided.
Yeah.
But like it fucking happened. So it's just like, okay, well, if that's a possibility, then you have to be prepared for all possibilities. And just trying to figure out how you can be best prepared.
It's a hard one, right? Because you really quickly see how quickly a lot of your options and choices can get taken away from you.
Yep.
And this isn't to go down the full conspiracy theory path of what the agenda was or anything like that. We can go down that path at some point. But I think, like you said, the fact of the matter is the safer our society gets, if you could fully guarantee that wasn't going to get used against us, then having cities that are quicker, having electric cars, having currency that we can move around easier, like having like facial recognition everywhere so we could get into venues at a much quicker rate. We don't have to have cards. We don't have to have paper trails. Like all of these things, under the assumption that it's not going to get used against us, is great.
Oh, it sounds,
you know what I mean?
Sounds impressive
like
on paper.
Having a couple companies dictating our entire food chain supply.
Yep.
Awesome, right? Like
efficiency.
Efficiency. Having people like going out of their way to put stuff in our water to make sure that we're healthy. All of these things are good if they weren't going to get used against us. But then there's just, even if there's that 1% chance that it can get used against us, in the safer our society gets, you're in a position where you can't do fucking anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't do anything, which
absolutely. I
do commend you for trying to go down this sort of path, because it sounds like a difficult one to try and set it up. Independency, is that the right word for it?
Yeah, I think so.
Self-sufficient?
Self-sufficiency.
Maybe?
Yeah. But yeah, man, it's like, I think there's millions of people out there that sort of reacted to that situation in this way. You know, I know you're one of them too, and we know a lot of like-minded people in that regard. And you see them sort of, a lot of people online, and there is so much more appreciation for the destruction or the negativity or the negative ways in which society can go now. So being dependent on a system that inherently doesn't have your best interests at heart, like why would you want to depend on that, you know?
It's a hard one, and I do want to chuck in a caveat on top of this, because I'm definitely aware that we still live in what it seems like one of the easiest places to live in the world.
Absolutely.
Right? So
yeah. Very good call.
I definitely don't want to come across like we're like, fuck, this is terrible.
Poor us.
When we clearly know that there's places around the world where the civilians are going through absolute hell.
Absolutely.
Right. But in saying that, I think that a lot of those places got there when there was warning signs.
Yep.
You know, like they had to get there from a good place to a bad place. Now we're seeing them as a bad place now, maybe a shitty place to live. We live in an awesome place right now, but as soon as you start seeing just like red flags, you know, just little red flags popping up here and there, it makes me think, well, fuck, what could this turn into in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years?
Yeah. And it can change at the drop of a hat, right? Like COVID took what was it, like 2 months before they shut everything down or something like that? Like it can really happen pretty quickly, I think. So just being prepared, or as best prepared as you possibly can be, you know, and that's not to say, I don't think going down like full doomsday prepping, you know, like isolation is necessarily a warranted thing to do at the moment. But like, man, I can easily picture a situation where like in however long you're like, fuck, I remember that conversation with Dylan, man, and I should have been doing more. You know what I mean?
I should have had a bunker like set up.
Yeah, exactly. So like, who knows? Like I can understand the thought process of going down that path to that length.
Well, clearly it's a hard one, right? Because like there was a lot of people who owned businesses throughout that time who got fucked on.
Yep.
So there's some businesses, like if you own a restaurant, you're in the events kind of management areas, that clearly wasn't a good business model to have for a situation like that.
Yep.
Like doesn't really work, which completely changed my mind on things, because I always thought it'd be so cool to have a business where you've got a place where the business is. So like if you run hotels, it's sick to have a venue, you know, it's really cool to have physical land, have assets, those sort of things. And throughout that time, it didn't seem as obvious that was a good idea.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And like, I certainly understand the attraction there to have like a brick and mortar business of something that is like tangibly yours, and you can go and see and touch and feel.
You can stand in it. It's your space. No one can come in.
Exactly. And you have full control sort of over the emotions and the energy in that space that ultimately you are giving to your clients or your customers. Like that is incredibly alluring, 100%. But yeah, and sort of after going through that, like, I mean, I've always wanted to open a bar, for example. I think that would be cool as hell, and just like sort of put my own spin on it, and like to create like a hub of connection, you know, in that capacity. But yeah, on the back of that, it's just like, okay, well, that wouldn't have worked. That would have gone quite poorly, and did go quite poorly for a lot of people, unfortunately. So what's the sort of highest level of independency you can kind of create, where you are creating value for other people, but also creating value or giving value, you know, from the business to others and from the business to the business owner. Then it's got to be online. I think at least like the first one or two to sort of get, you know, money coming in, at least sort of give yourself a little bit of buffer to then go and do, you know, potentially more traditional stuff. But I think, you know, having all your eggs in one basket, in one place, I mean, for me, that 2, 3, 4 year experience just kind of made me a little bit more aware of the risk behind that as well. And it's something that wasn't a risk you ever would have considered before.
Not at all.
Yeah. Not
at all. And so I do want to ask you, because you mentioned to me this detox. The detox.
Yeah.
Have you started it?
I have not, man. I have not. Yeah.
Do you think it's something you're going to do?
Look, it's an interesting one. So yeah, a bit of context, you know. So we all got the vaccine, and you know, most people did, and a lot of people have had some pretty adverse side effects to that. So sort of the point of the detox is to try and remove some of those negative elements that were or are present in our bodies as a result of that, you know. And there's a lot of research out there, if you can find it, that hasn't been buried sort of on this topic. But yeah, Dr. Peter McCulloch, who sort of was one of the trailblazers in this sort of in this space that was against the general narrative that was being pushed around it. Has done a lot of research and sort of put together just a list of a few sort of vitamins and supplements that he thinks you can take that will sort of cleanse your body of some of these, you know, metals and other sort of minerals and stuff that are in that, mainly sort of around the spike protein and stuff, which I don't know enough about to sort of go into a lot of detail, but yeah, it seems intense. Well, that's a wrong word. It's just like a sort of 3-6 month thing to be taking sort of additional supplements and stuff, very natural stuff, sort of every day. And I just haven't prioritized it and made it a big enough of a priority to do that. But sort of have all the information, have, you know, access to the products through the, you know, just pharmacies and sort of health food stors and stuff.
These aren't like illegal
yeah, no,
thing,
it's all very above board. Like you
get
can
it
go
off
down
the black market,
Chemist Warehouse and get most of this stuff, you know. But yeah, I was chatting with another friend of ours last night who's sort of gone down the naturopath side of things, and he's sort of had some pretty interesting conversations with his naturopath about a similar sort of treatment, I suppose, that could work, and it sounds a lot less sort of laborious. So I'm curious to sort of see how he goes.
Do you know what it is? Can you speak to it or
not really? It's just like a few like sort of like liquid drops, I think it was, but that's kind of really all I know without like just bastardizing
just completely butchering it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, curious, like just to explore sort of different options. You know, I think. Again, like health and fitness is so important to a lot of people, and it's just constantly just checking if your body is functioning in the right way and if there is an alignment with sort of what you're putting in your system with the goals and just the overall quality or functionality of the system. So yeah, it's interesting. It's super interesting, and yeah.
If you start doing it, let me know how it goes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if there's any measurable thing that you can do to know.
To quantify it.
To quantify whether any of this shit's real or not.
Yeah. It could be, man, just spending a couple $100 on curcumin and all these kind of things.
Yeah, I've actually got them, for anybody who's interested at home, I've actually...
you pulled it up?
I wrote them down. I don't have them in quantities here. So, you know... Look into it yourself, obviously.
Do your own research.
Not medical advice. So we got something called bromelain, whatever that is, nattokinase, nattokinase, and curcumin.
Yep.
So those three things, the trifecta, to be able to shed your blood from the spike protein.
Allegedly. Yeah. So
I've full heard a conspiracy about people like getting in accidents and getting blood given to them, and them picking up spike proteins and things like that, getting like negative effects, kind of like what's been happening from some people with the vaccines, but they haven't taken the vaccine. They've been given blood from people who have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's everywhere, right? Like, and you know, with the amount of substances, I suppose, that sort of like our food and stuff gets injected with constantly, you know, in the form of antibiotics and vaccines, and the amount of treatment that even, you know, a lot of our crops and stuff go through in terms of insecticides and stuff like that. Like, we don't know like what that is all really doing to us. Like it can't be good, like to the very least, right? Like,
it can't be good.
Yeah.
It can't be good. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. You'll have to listen to it. I just dropped an episode with Ellen where we go into the food side of things and sort of talk about that, go into some methods of trying to eat as healthy as possible, or at least avoid as much shit as possible.
Well, you guys sort of eat like pretty strictly vegan, vegetarian, right?
Pretty plant-based for the most part. Ellen's fully vegan.
Yeah. You're sneaking in a steak every once in a while?
No, I get her sister's got chickens out at their family property, so I try and get as many eggs as I can from there, which is, I feel like, keeps me keeps me going.
Yeah.
But Ellen cooks absolutely beautiful food, so there's no harm in the nutrition that we're getting at the moment.
No, absolutely. And like for everyone at home, Alan is one. She is an incredible cook.
Oh, she's amazing.
Like, so everything she's doing with sort of the sourdough business, and when we were over here for dinner a few weeks ago, that the Indian sort of like spread that she put on, man, that looked next level, man. And there's me just eating my chicken and rice, dude, like just longingly looking. But man, so
bulking season comes first. I get that.
Yeah,
I respect that.
So they're eating good, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, they are eating good.
Have you heard much about people trying to get big on a vegan diet?
Not much, honestly. No.
I don't know if it's possible or not.
Well, I mean, you got to be still getting your protein and everything like that from somewhere, right? And I'm aware of there's a lot of sort of plant protein based supplements and sort of alternatives and stuff these days. But again, I haven't done much reading or much research into this space, but I can't imagine that it's equitable to the more traditional forms, chicken, red meat, all these kind of things, in terms of like, A, the amount that's in it, but B, the way that your body ingests it and sort of makes use of that protein. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, like whether it's, because I know there's arguments over like there's X amount of protein in certain plants, but then whether it's like bioavailable, like whether your body can actually access that protein properly. And then, also on top of that, I've heard so much shit. I mean, about protein powders in general, you can go down that rabbit hole, but I've heard a lot of shit about vegan protein powders and drinks and stuff that are just kind of like, they're marketed in a certain way. I don't know if I can explain this properly, but I heard them say that the way that they test protein products is by the like amount of nitrogen. The amount of nitrogen in the product. So they test it, and if it's got a certain level of nitrogen, that indicates a certain level of protein or something. But there's artificial ways of boosting the nitrogen levels or something in it, right? So you think you're getting 25 grams of protein, but you're just like getting a fucking sugar spike, and it's just like eating a chocolate bar, basically. And I've tried a bunch of different protein, like plant-based protein powders over the last year, and they've all made me feel fucking shit.
Oh, really?
Made me feel shit as. Just like, you drink it and then you spike, and then I'm feeling like a bit nauseous, and I'm just like, my energy levels, like energy's all over the place.
Yeah, that's probably not great. Hey, like you got to listen to your body at the end of the day.
Yeah, not at all. So,
and like some of the ones I've tried as well, like some hemp based ones and stuff too, like they're just chalky and like it tastes like shit. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I can force myself to do certain things, but I don't have to force myself to do that. But I'm sure there are great alternatives out there. Don't get me wrong.
I need a fucking scientist or someone on here to explain it to me properly.
Yeah.
So, man, I wanted to take a bit of a detour and just ask you a few things about the personal development sort of path that you're on. Whether you can answer these or not, I'm just interested in your opinion on how you feel about it. The first thing was purpose, right? Like it's one of the first things that you hear in the personal development space when you hear people talking to people about how to sort your life out, how to get moving is find your purpose, find your meaning. Do you feel like you've done that?
I think I'm a lot closer to figuring it out than I have been before. Like I couldn't sort of like read you, or tell you a nice paragraph that sort of sums it up nicely. I can give you sort of like an overarching feeling or view, I guess, that sort of helps.
However you can describe it, it doesn't have to sound good. I just your personal feeling. Yeah. It's confusing.
Yeah, it is, and it's an interesting one. I think. Look, man, I think my like take on the meaning of all of this of life and purpose and things like that. And I sort of touched on it before, but is to really be the best person you can be. And in doing so, you then have a responsibility to help others achieve that same level of, just to achieve a similar thing, you know, like get yourself to where you need to be so then you can bring others up around you, right? So, I mean, that's sort of why, like, trying to just work really hard at my job to sort of help make sure that, you know, I mean, again, it's a good job and I earn good money from it, but also that people's lives are going to be set up in a good way, and they're super, and their retirement isn't something they have to worry about. But then, like, you know, building a business and stuff is to make sure as well that, like, I'm really set up in an incredibly well and sort of prosperous and plentiful financial way. So then I can ensure that the people I love are taken care of. And once you know, acquire a certain amount of wealth, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad, but also like a lot of good you can really do in this world. And you can like help a lot of people who aren't in a fortunate enough position or haven't had the same opportunities that I've had sort of throughout life. So it does become incredibly important to sort of get yourself to a position to where you can give back to others in a certain way. And man, I think like at the end of the day, dude, I just want to help people. Like I enjoy building things, whether that be relationships, myself, businesses. Like I do enjoy doing that. So just, man, I feel like my purpose is to really get the best out of myself so that I can then help others do the same, to try and, you know, sort of wrap it up nicely a little bit there.
Yeah, of course. No, perfect.
Yeah.
And in line with that, for someone who's out there who's fucking lost,
yeah,
you know, for I guess probably for the advice that you have for guys out there who are lost and they're like, well, I don't really have a meaning. Like I don't feel that sense of purpose at all. Like where do you begin? Where do you start?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. Look, I mean, like if people are listening to this and you are in that position, like talk to me, like talk to Dill, like just talk to people, you know.
That's a good point. Reach out.
Yeah, reach out, man.
So
like,
your messages are open for people to hit you up?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like DMs are open. It's sort of like trying to build a bit of a community of like-minded people as well who are like struggling to find their purpose and their passion. So sort of like a bit of a statement that I'm sort of going to put in my bio is like, I want to help 18 to 30-year-olds find their passion through fitness, through mindset, fitness, and business. So because that's reflecting on my journey, sort of when I retired from swimming, let's call it. Like I lost a huge part of my identity in that process. Like growing up, I was, you know, the swimmer. I was going to go to the Olympics, do all these great things, and I did still do quite a bit and achieved a lot, which I'm proud of and grateful for. But ultimately, when I retired, like I was nowhere. Like it just sort of like, not that it didn't mean anything, but like I was just lost. I wasn't a swimmer anymore. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what direction I didn't know what direction that I wanted to go in. I just didn't know. So like everything just like fell apart. And again, like it was through, I guess, spending some time to try and figure that out, you know, going off the rails a little bit, realizing that sort of wasn't what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be, and talking to people, just like experiencing new things, talking to people, not being afraid to try new stuff, however daunting that may be. And the more you do that, I think you build up a level of self-confidence in yourself that once you sort of go through these experiences, you really do sort of bounce back better, and it builds a level of confidence and belief that you can do stuff. Like you can do this. You can make it through today. You can make it through tomorrow because you've made it through yesterday and the day before that. So that momentum that you end up building, and this might take, man, it took me years to sort of really get to the point where I am now.
Like when did you stop swimming? When was an official end to that?
It was March of 2018. 2018. So 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah, almost like 6 years and a month ago.
And what was the decision for that? Did something happen, or it was just time?
No, so that was like when I graduated from college, or the college swim year finished up. So for people who don't know, I suppose, like when I was 18, or just after graduating year 12, I got a swimming scholarship over to Michigan State University in the US, and moved over there just after my 19th birthday, and spent the better part of the next 4 years over in the US, sort of swimming and studying and stuff. So yeah, it was cool, man. It was a great experience. But yeah, at the end of that journey, you know, I'd fallen out of love with swimming, and it sort of wasn't for me anymore. And I felt that I was ready for what was next.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be, I didn't really know. And once I got into that, I was like, what the fuck am I doing?
Like, what do you do from here?
Yeah. Where do I go? Who am I?
You're right. When it's your whole identity is wrapped up in you being a swimmer, like everything you do on a daily and weekly basis, swimming, it's how you introduce yourself. It's what you talk about.
Yeah. It's all I did, man.
Like, gets ripped away.
Yeah. Like, I was training sort of 20, 25 hours a week, always competing for like 15 years. Like, I grew up in that environment, and all of a sudden I didn't have it anymore. And then you sort of lose in that, you know, a lot of the camaraderie, the sort of team environment, and sort of the relationships in there as well. And it just, it sort of fell away pretty quickly. So it's just like I've been there. Like, I know what it's like to sort of go, like, wake up and be like, okay, like, what now? Like, I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know, you know, sort of went through a stage where, like, I didn't know sort of who my friends were, or I felt like I couldn't relate to anyone because they hadn't had that, you know, unique college experience that I'd had. And coming back home and moving back home after being overseas for so long, you know, no one knew what that life was like, really. Like a mate came and visited me for a couple of weeks, which was awesome, but that was still like only a glimpse of what was doing every day for 4 years. So I just felt like truly alone and truly isolated. And it wasn't, you know, again, it took me years. It honestly took like 3 years for me to sort of like figure it out a little bit and start to feel like a little bit more grounded and myself, and like have a vision, just a brief glimpse of a vision of where I wanted my life to go and who I wanted to be. And like COVID was a catalyst for that. Sort of, you know, a buddy of mine and I, like Jay, we moved down to the beach, sort of lived in like a sort of a big granny flat that his grandparents have on their property down in Anglesea, and just, isolated myself again down there with him, and we just hung out, like surfed a lot, and just disconnected from everything. And it was through that sort of period of isolation and support that was able to just figure things out again. But yeah, man, like, it's tough. I think, like, to sort of go through that and pull yourself up, you know, it's incredibly hard to do on your own, and it's not necessarily something that anyone should ever really have to do on their own, and I hope they don't. So yeah, like, hit me up if you need, or
reach out,
please. Like, don't be afraid. It's just like, I know what that feels like, and it's fucking shit, but like, you will get through it if you don't give up. Like, the only way you can lose in life is if you quit, because eventually you will get to where you want to go. Eventually, it might take you 6 months, it might take you 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Like, time is irrelevant. Like, we can't, we've sort of got to reshift our thinking away from, you know, such linear sort of time-based frames, because it doesn't necessarily serve us, because nothing happens when we want it to happen, and it happens when it's supposed to happen, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and like, no one's got it fully figured out either. Like, we are all just sort of making it up as we go to a degree. But yeah, just reach out. I think at the end of the day, it's probably the number one thing I'd say.
100%. And you've got, you mentioned this community that you want to kind of bring together. What's the vision with that ultimately? Do you have some broader vision of what you're aiming for? Or?
Yeah, man. So like I'm sort of working with, a professional development group at the moment whose sort of main focus is sort of building an asset, but also building yourself too. And it's something that I've certainly got a lot of value from and learnt a lot through, and sort of leveled up my associations a little bit, and through sort of, reading different books that I may or may not have come across, listening to different content. And it's just trying to just, build that same community, just try and build, welcome more people who are interested in self-improvement, and just create an environment where people can come from all different kinds of, or all different walks of life, have completely different experiences, but again, are all working towards a similar goal, which is being the best version of themselves. Like that would be great to sort of bring people along the journey and work with people, more closely, I suppose, where, I can have more of these conversations with them and sort of get into like the real details of it, and just say, hey, look, like I'm not, a psychologist or whatever, or, a life coach, but I'm just here to talk to you about my experiences, in the hope that it can help you figure shit out and help you make sense of what you're going through, and vice versa. Like just having that sort of collaboration.
It's really good to hear, and especially because I think I've definitely found this hard when you look out into the space of to find mentors, whether it's on the internet or like how everybody does it. You see someone on a podcast, you read somebody's book, you see someone do a talk, a seminar, something. You look up to someone out there somewhere, and they've got good things to say about life. Mm-hmm. But that can only go so far, really, because they don't know you. They don't know your situation, and even in a conversation like this, there's only so specific that we can really get. And sometimes when it comes to personal development advice, I feel like we're just throwing out platitudes, just these broad things that are like, I guess I understand that, but how do I actually apply that to my fucking life? Which can be frustrating sometimes. So I really think that the only way to really get it done, or to make certain steps forward, is by having one-on-one connection, whether it's mentorship or it's something a little bit more equal, but like one-on-one specific advice that people can give you. So if people can reach out to you and just like get that, I think that's really important. And especially in a way where, for instance, of like if you're in a workplace and you're getting that advice, you want to trust it to some degree, but at the same time, the person who's employing you, their advice is obviously going to lean, unless they're a really awesome person, their advice to you on how you should live your life is always going to lean towards continue working for them. Yeah. So as long as you're working for them, then they can help you. But maybe the best thing for you is to move somewhere else, just for example, but they wouldn't say that, So finding the right guidance from people who aren't necessarily getting anything out of you or aren't invested in which direction you take, I think is super important, because it's fucking hard to find. Well,
yeah, I think like there does have to be some degree of alignment, right? I think because I think both parties have to be equally invested in one another in pursuit of a goal or a direction, to ensure that like there is that type of environment or that relationship that productive type of relationship is built, as you said, where it's not, I will tell you something, but it's not really in your best interest, because I want you to do this for me. You kind of want to go here, but I'm your boss. So like it's always going to get sort of tilted.
When they've got a vested interest in you acting a certain way, it's like, fuck, how helpful is that advice?
And you don't have a vested interest in them. Yeah. That's where it breaks down.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
It's a hard one. Trying to. It comes down to trust, right? And I feel like in the world we live in right now, don't get me wrong, I love the personal development movement. I think that anything to do with people bettering themselves is always good. But there's obviously people who take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Which fucking pisses me off.
Yeah.
And so you've got these people going, I 100% know exactly how you should live. Don't get me wrong. Just fucking buy this fucking course. And then it's like, well, buying a course and actually getting help from it is good.
Yep.
But being able to verify the right people to trust is fucking hard.
Yeah, because, people are always going to layer their own, through a course or something like that. In that example, people are always going to layer their own experiences and their own feelings, into it, whether they intend to or not. And if it is just you're reading something, and it could be great in theory, but when trying to put it to practice or something like that in your life, you kind of realize, well, okay, I understand that worked for you and it may have worked for a lot of people, but that's not working for me, and I need some more help. So as you said, it's just like, what do you go and buy another course, or like do you just keep spending money on these courses? Whereas, as we were saying before, like having someone in your life, who is a little bit further ahead of you and can help just sort of show you the way, and there is that mutually beneficial element of the relationship there too, is so important. And it is hard to find these people, but it's worth it.
Finding a good mentor is, I swear, the way to go.
Yeah.
The way to go. Final question for you, man. If you look down the future, what is we're all aiming for a perfect day in the end, we want to wake up in a certain way and we want it to go a certain way. What does a perfect day look like to you?
How far in the future you want to go, bro?
It's far enough until it looks how you want.
Yeah, fair, bro. Fair. Look, I think the idea of waking up one day with the love and support of, a wife and kids and a family that I've built, and in a house that's magnificent in sort of any part of the world that we want to be in at that time, is so alluring to me. It's so intriguing. But yeah, it would just being surrounded by that sort of family network too, and have the flashy stuff too, like be able to sort of wake up with the wife and kids, and get in the McLaren and go down to the gym, and train for a couple hours and come back, do a bit of work, hang out with the kids, and then go catch up with some friends or do more podcasts or whatever it may be, sort of later on in the day or at night or something like that, I think is probably how I can describe it. But just, having the freedom to spend my time in however way I want to see it. So I can have quality time with family, quality time with friends, and travel and see the world, and still have the material stuff too, which like I like. I'm not, ashamed to sort of admit that. That is a big attractor. So yeah, I don't know if that sort of answered your question in good enough detail, but
it's your answer, man. It's your answer. I hope you get there.
I appreciate it, bro. Mate, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
I appreciate you coming in and just being honest about your life. It's really good to hear. I think it'll be helpful for people out there. And yeah, do want to reiterate, anyone listening to this who wants to reach out to you, go for it.
Yeah, please do. Absolutely.
Reach out for a chat, or if you need an AI bot to re-engage your leads.
Yeah,
reach out for that as well.
Reach out also, 100%.
But I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the friendship, and we'll do it again soon.
Me too, brother. Looking forward to it post Bali.
That's it.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, we'll do a podcast after Bali. I think that'll be good.
Done. Sounds
awesome,
good.
mate. Enjoy.
Appreciate, bro.
Peace.
See you guys.
Peace out, everybody.
See you guys. Thank you.